So download the Fox Bet Super 6 app today. And we'll be right back.
A little bigger than you thought, huh?
Building on our previous advice related to those aged 30 years and under, we now advise that unvaccinated adults aged 30 to 39 years who do not have an underlying health condition that puts them at higher risk of severe COVID-19 should be preferentially offered an alternative to the AstraZeneca vaccine where this is possible and only where no substantial delay in access